Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About Sex. I am Joanna Kennedy and I am excited to have you here tonight. I apologize for getting started a couple minutes late. I'm using new technology this month so that we can have a more interactive conversation. And so I had a few challenges, so I apologize for that. But we're here and we're going to spend the next hour talking about sex and anything related to it that is here. So many of you probably know me. I'm guessing you might have joined me in the past for another Let's Talk About Sex event. And for those of you that don't, I am Joanna Kennedy and I am absolutely passionate about men and women being the amazing beings that they are and having great lives together. Great lives in bed, great lives romantically, great lives in business, and everything in between. And let me tell you, I'll tell you a little bit of my story tonight, but definitely know what it's like to not have that work in all of those places, actually. And so let's start there, actually. A little bit about me and why I am on this live video with people asking questions. And I actually just realized I need to tell you how to interact with me. So there's a control panel for the webinar. And if you've got a question at any point, you can raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon, or there's also a questions box. And so you can submit your questions via either raising your hand, and then when you raise your hand, I'll unmute you, and you can actually interact with me live on the webinar. Or you can submit your questions via the questions dialogue, and I will watch that as well and answer questions as we go. So that's the technical way to interact with me tonight. And so back to a little bit about why I do this and how I got to be sitting here and sharing this. So again, I come out of the corporate world, and not only do I come out of the corporate world, but I come out as an electrical engineer with an MBA working in the oil and gas high-tech industries of Houston. And not only Houston, but Houston in the 90s in the Good Old Boy Network. And I was a girl from the Midwest and had no idea what I was getting myself into. Engineering comes from the earlier part of my life where I grew up in the heart of the women's movement. And I grew up with the conditioning that as a woman, you can do anything a man can do, and you better do it just as well, if not better. And so I prided myself. I was like, all right, I'll do that. And I also had one of the first divorced moms in the neighborhood and watched her struggle financially because she had depended on a man, didn't have a college degree, and all of a sudden had 2 little girls to take care of. And so all of that conditioning led me to be a really driven, intense, powerful woman. And powerful is not bad, driven's not bad, intense isn't bad. However, when you put all of those together and that's how a woman lives, it's often, if you ask most women, not the ideal way for us to live. There's a lot of juicy yumminess in us. And that juicy yumminess, when we're driven, when we're pushing, when we're aggressive, we lose access to our juiciness. And if you get into one of my workshops where we really dive in and we talk about what is masculine and feminine energy, which there are exceptions to this, but typically more predominant, male bodies will have masculine energy while female bodies will have predominantly feminine energy. And so those were out of whack for me. And I carried a ton of masculine energy in my female body. So much so that I actually didn't realize that I had much of a girl in me. And yet I was really unhappy. And in the realization that I was really unhappy, I started to recognize that there was a girl in here. And she was longing for the juiciness. She was longing for the hot, incredible orgasm. She was longing for the tender love of her heart. She was longing for rest. She was very tired of pushing so hard, and that pushing that is not our natural essence as women becomes incredibly exhausting. And so that was part of my journey of realizing that it couldn't be juicy, that it couldn't be a girl, not just because I didn't know how, but because I was told that that was really, actually, in a lot of ways, a lousy thing. Read a book a few years ago, several years ago now, but it was like, in our society, whether we're talking to a man or we're talking to a woman, the most derogatory thing that we could say is some form of "you're a girl." And so being a girl hasn't had a great reputation. And yet, when I ask most men, they love being around a woman. And they love being around her femininity. As a matter of fact, it fuels them. And so I was reading some notes from a course about 5 years ago that I took as I'm studying all of this recently. And there was just this great analogy that Alison Armstrong, who I highly recommend her work, spoke about. And she said, for men, imagine for any of us that we would walk over and stick our finger into a light socket. And that the energy and the power that comes through that, well, it's when a woman is alive in her sexuality, when she is juicy and turned on, that's almost, it's not the electrocuting energy, but the intense energy that can light us up. That's what it's like for a man to have his penis in a woman that is on fire with who she is, that is lit up. It lights him up. It electrifies him. It fuels him. And so men have to be open to receiving that and experiencing that and seeing women for who they are and what they bring. And we as women have to be in our juiciness and in our fullness in order to bring that kind of electrifying experience to not only our man, but to ourselves. There's other work that speaks about sacred sexuality, and that through the communion of our bodies and connecting with the heart of a woman, it's a gateway to God. It's a gateway to the greatest spirit and experience of spirit that we could ever exist. And that we could ever experience, actually, is what I wanted to say. And so it is the power of our sexuality to awaken us to the deepest pleasures, to the most incredible passion, to the deepest love. Not just love for one another, but love for ourselves. The experience of ourselves in sexuality is profound. We talked last month about Tantra and sacred sexuality and exploring that. This is a piece that didn't come up in that, but there's a way in a tantric practice, in a sacred sexuality practice, that we, and this is actually true for all love relationships, but particularly now let's talk about sacred sexuality and the relationship with ourselves, the knowing of ourselves, the experiencing of ourselves is where the potency and the power and the potential of our sexual relationship actually appears. We get so focused on the other person. What am I giving? What am I doing? And now there's differences between men and women. And again, when we get into our Liberating Your Sexual Self workshop or in our Igniting Romance, we start to look at what are those distinctions between men and women, both in who we are and how we show up romantically, and in how we show up in bed and how we show up sexually. And so those distinctions in our needs, those distinctions in the ways that we relate. And so it's not uncommon. Men love, yes, women, listen, men love to pleasure us. And yes, they want to be pleasured, but ask most men how much pleasure they get from feeling the pleasure, witnessing the pleasure of their woman. And so we can get into a downward spiral of we're going towards orgasm, we're going towards a goal, we're trying to have it, make him feel good because we had an orgasm, or we just want to feel good about ourselves. Oh yeah, I could have an orgasm. Besides the great pleasure that actually comes when we do. But it is that chasing after it. It is that of trying to get it, trying to have it be a goal, having it be an objective, having it be a requirement. Man, have an orgasm be a requirement for men or women. And yes, blessed be most men have access to their orgasm, and there are many who don't. And particularly as the hormones change with age, the powerful erection may not come as quickly, may not last as long, may not be accessible on certain days. And so again, as we get into the depth of the practice of connecting powerfully from love, from truth in our sexuality, it doesn't matter if there's a heart on here. We can have a powerful experience together. And so coming back to these distinctions, and that men love to pleasure women. And so women, just to notice this, and what he wants is for you to offer up what you desire. When he knows what you want, he gets to make you happy, and he gets to make him happy, and he gets to turn you both on. He wants to know your pleasure. He's not just down there having fun just for the fun of it. I mean, yes, he is down there for the fun of it. It didn't actually come out quite the way I wanted it to. But he's not just down there to do it. That's what I'm trying to say. He's down there to offer you pleasure and to experience his own pleasure through your pleasure. And so if he's down giving you the most amazing oral sex, let him know. Give him a sound. If it's good, but it could be different, and you have a hint of how it could be different, let him know. Honey, a little to the right. A little slower, a little higher. Anything that you know. And now, here's another piece. Is that as women, we don't always know what I want or what we want. I don't always know what I want. Sometimes I'm like, my brain's going, or some part of me's going a little to the right, but I'm like, why? What he's doing right now, right here, should work perfectly. So why am I going to bother him and say a little to the right? But our women's intuition, it knows. And so often, especially when I first started practicing this, it would be like, something would go off and go a little to the right, and I'd question it, and then I'd go, all right, just say it. And I go a little to the right, and then, whoo, that was it. Just this little tiny, in our clitoris, our pearl, as I like to refer to it, is very small. And the subtlest movement, couple of millimeters one direction, can totally change the experience. So women, offer your men that gift. Offer them the gift of knowing what turns you on. And there's ways to practice together. There's ways to discover that together. And so every lovemaking or play session doesn't have to lead to intercourse, doesn't have to lead to orgasm, doesn't have to lead anywhere. You could take some time aside, and this is, again, another great practice from a sacred sexuality standpoint. It's a great practice from just plain having good old sex, is to, let's play, let's find out. As kids, there was the, let's play doctor. Well, it's sort of a form of that, in that let me try this. What's it like when I kiss your belly? Do you like it more when I nibble on it? Do you like it when I lick on it? And you can do that with any part of the body. What's it like if you bring that attention to the pearl, to the clitoris, and just play with it? There's no agenda. Does it feel better to be stroked, to be touched if you were to make the clitoris a dial of the clock? Are there different locations on your clitoris that have more sensation? Absolutely, I can tell you that mine do. There's, the one side has more sensation than the other side. And often the lower part has more sensation than the upper part. And so I've learned that about my body, and that's powerful information. Now, again, most men know this, but there's no formula. What worked today may not work tomorrow. And you got it down yesterday, you gave her the most mind-blowing, incredible orgasm, and you're doing the same thing today, and she's kind of just laying there and nothing's happening. There is no formula. And yet you can use your wisdom and your experience to start to bring her deeper into what's possible. And so the two of you together communicating. Same thing if we want to come over and talk about stroking a man's lingam. So I use the word lingam, I could use the word penis, and there's been so much negativity. There's been so much that is disrespectful about sexuality. And so lingam is a Sanskrit term that comes out of sacred sexuality that means wand of light. And it's very different to have a wand of light penetrating you than it is to have a cock or a penis. Same thing then. How does it feel to have a wand of light versus a cock or a penis? And some days you're going to want to have a cock, and that's great too. But I will typically in these conversations use the word lingam to just honor our sexuality and the power that it has. And again, another aspect of that is that we have incredible healing potential. Not just for healing sexual wounds, but sexuality, there's an article recently, and I've personally experienced this at least once, is that sexuality and sexual energy can be incredibly healing. And so particularly the article I was speaking about in my own personal experience is migraines. And so discovered that with some good yoni massage, so yoni means sacred space, a woman's vagina in Sanskrit. So with some good yoni massage, some good massaging of my pearl, my clitoris, my migraine went from a 6 or a 7 down to a 1 or 2. And for me, that was really great for the middle of the afternoon. It totally made a difference in the rest of my day. And so there's more and more awareness around the possibility of our sexual energy for healing. Our sexual energy is also one of the most powerful manifesting energies that exist in the universe. So if there's something you're wanting to create in your life, then bring your sexual energy to what you want to create. Whether you're in a partnership or not, bring your sexual energy. You can pleasure yourself. You can raise your own sexual energy simply in purpose of or with an intention to manifest a result. So that is definitely out there too. So I wanted to go back over, we were talking about pleasuring a woman. So now the same thing of getting to know the different parts of your man's lingam. And so is it some men's, the head of their penis is incredibly sensitive, and so to just be directly and primarily on the head is going to be too much. There's others that, like, if you're not on the head most of the time, they're not getting the sensation that they really desire. The different sections of the erect penis, erect or unerect, tie into different centers in our body when we look at some of the Eastern traditions. And so there are different sensations, whether you're on stroking either with your hand or with your mouth, the upper third of the lingam, the middle third, the lower third. Very different experiences. So in those play times where you have no objective, just tell me how this feels. Is this good for you? Do you like it? Do you prefer it if I'm up higher? Do you prefer if I'm down lower? Do you like both hands? One down lower, one up higher? What is it? And so that you can do that from a place of not having to get it right and not having to try to pleasure, just to be curious. So play with it and discover what's possible. So let's see, I'm going to take a quick look. I've been talking for a while. Let me see if there's any questions here yet. Nope, nobody has any questions submitted. So I've got a couple that people sent in ahead of time. So I'm going to take a look at my question sheet and I'm going to answer a couple things. Let's see. Here's one. I'm wondering about being more multi-orgasmic with my partner. I can be very multi-orgasmic on my own, but have difficulty coming more than once, and sometimes even at all with a partner. Any tips or ideas? I'm pretty good at communicating what turns me on, but it doesn't seem to make a huge difference, regardless of the other person's technique. So I don't know for sure if this is a man or a woman asking this question. My gut tells me it's probably a woman, and so let's start first with the multi-orgasmic quality. And multi-orgasms are available to both men and women. And we are more familiar with that idea for women. And yet it is very much possible for a man when you cultivate and you get to know your own sexual energy. So I was talking earlier about the relationship with your own sensation. The more that you start to understand the interactions of the various pelvic muscles and the interaction of your breath, the interaction of your focus, the awareness of the sensations in your body, you will begin to have a lot more choice. And so there is, I'm thinking about, there's some teaching around what might be called ejaculatory choice or ejaculatory control. One of the things that is a part of a man discovering his multi-orgasmic abilities is to start to choose and have control over when he ejaculates. Now, for many men, it's like, what do you mean I want an orgasm without ejaculating? That's the only way most men have ever experienced those two things, and they feel like as if one didn't exist, the other wouldn't be powerful. And yet the truth is, and you can ask any man who's spent any time in practicing sacred sexuality and who knows this, is that when you can separate that ejaculation and choose when you want to have that experience, it opens up the body into a whole nother realm of being able to have multiple orgasms and being able to experience those orgasms for longer durations, for deeper intensities. So it's a choice. And there's lots of information about that. And if you want some more wisdom, you want some more recommendations, or you want to work with somebody personally, let me know. That's an area we can work on. And then let's come back to this particular question now that I've kind of talked about the multi-orgasmic qualities, is that I'm guessing, again, that this is a woman, and she's talking about that she can be multi-orgasmic when she's pleasuring herself, and not so much when she's with a man, and sometimes she can't come at all. Now, there are similarities to this question in the experience for a lot of women, and what it comes down to most often when we're not able to orgasm with a partner, or truthfully, if we're not able to orgasm with ourselves, and this was me for many years. I would, orgasms could come every 6 months. Orgasms could come every year. It was certainly, and I've grown into where orgasms are much more available, but even today, there are days and weeks where orgasms aren't available. It's rare that I would ever go a week at this point, but what's happening in my body from my cycle, what's happening in my body emotionally, how much stress is in my body, how much I'm feeling connected to my partner, all of those have a huge impact on my ability to have an orgasm. So for women, if that's a challenge for you, is to looking at how comfortable are you in your own skin? How much do you trust yourself? How much are you willing to be wild and uncontrolled? Because orgasm, here's a challenge, is that when we're by ourselves, as this I'm guessing woman is speaking of, is that she has total control. She's aware of her own body. She doesn't have to trust anybody else. Nobody else is going to see her. And so what we can do is shut down when we meet with another person, we shut down our access and our trust to our orgasmic juice. So I'd have a woman look at how much she's trusting her own body, how much she's willing to be out of her body, how much she is willing to be out of control, how close she feels to her partner. And so again, here she's speaking of it works well when I'm on my own and not so well when I'm with my partner. So that leads me to there's something related, and it might not be her partner, but it might be an overriding trust of men. It might be an overriding belief in not wanting to see anybody to see her in that vulnerable or exposed state of the orgasm. So those are possibilities as well. And so each woman's different, but looking at trust of self and each other, looking at comfort, looking at willingness to be out of control, those would be the number one things that I would bring into any conversation where orgasm isn't available, male or female. And I will have clients that come to me as men, and it's not that necessarily, well, in some cases orgasm isn't available, or it takes long, long periods of time for that orgasm to come, or the erection isn't possible. And so again, there are self-trust issues, they're believing in your own potency, men, there's emotional things. So as I said, there's a variety of things that can contribute to the ups and down swings of my orgasmic ability and capacity. And then it also plays in hugely to our emotions. and wounding. If somebody says something to us in the heat of sexuality, or we have an experience where we get embarrassed or ashamed, that can have effect for years. And it might not show up every time, but it might show up under certain circumstances. And that shutdown that happened from that one hurtful experience can have an impact for years. So this is where you want to start to get access and to heal and to ask the question just in a curious way of what's here. And then get the help or the support. If you don't get an immediate answer, get the help or the support so that you can have the orgasms and you and your partner can have the pleasure and the connection and the intimacy that I'm guessing you're both craving. So that's what's possible there. Let's see what else we've got. Any more questions here? Nope. All right, let's see. Safe sex, and particularly in the area of Tantra. So that was another question that has come in various forms a few different times. And so what you want to be aware of is, and you need to do your own reading, because I am not an expert on all the different scenarios and the ways to contract. That's not my expertise, but what I am about is bringing you the awareness and the comfort to have the conversations and gain the information that you need. And so it's typically not even called safe sex, it's the safer sex now, because there are risks in almost any interaction unless we know that we are with a partner who we have been tested and monogamous with for at least, and it varies on depending particularly for HIV, it depends on the window period, if you will, of that test. And there's certain tests that need a period of time since the sexual interaction in order to give you really good results and solid results that you can depend on. So conversation for singles, incredibly important for you to find your ability to honor yourself. And I can't tell you the number of people that I meet that brush over the topic of safe sex. And they'll be with a new partner in all kinds of ways without having a conversation about when they were last tested or when they last had a partner. Great, they might have had a test 6 months ago, but how many partners or how recent have they had a partner since then? And how do they engage with partners? And people who are not in exclusive relationships, what protection are you taking between those relationships? So in a tantric, one of the questions that I didn't get to also last month was, if I'm a single, how do I practice Tantra? Now, let's speak about that, and then I'll continue with the safer sex conversation. So practicing Tantra, you can absolutely learn to cultivate and pleasure your own body. You can learn to move your own energy. You can learn to open up your capacity for pleasure through your breath, through your voice, through the sounding, through your body movements, how you're holding. And that's one way to practice it. There are also singles that practice Tantra within what's called a container. And so I have, in some cases, they call them Tantra buddies. And we have decided, if we're going to be a Tantra buddy, that at least for this one particular instance, now we could create a container that for 6 months, we're going to practice Tantra together. Or tonight, we're going to practice Tantra together. And in that, you're going to set the container for what your experience is and what is in the container and what is outside of the container. So that's where you come into a boundaries discussion. And so boundaries, again, play into not only what do I want and what is honoring of me and not honoring of me, but also what is honoring of me in terms of protecting myself and taking care of myself from a safe sex STD standpoint. So the conversation might happen as, in this tantric practice, I'm good with hands-on touch. I'm good with, I might be, some practitioners as singles decide that kissing is part of that container. Some decide that it's not part of that container, because for many, kissing is an incredibly intimate experience. So they may choose to leave that out of the tantric practice because there's not a romantic practice here. or a romantic connection here. It's a practice of feeling our sexuality. And they're powerful. For those of you that sounds like this is crazy, I'm having sexual relations with somebody that I'm not in relationship with. It can be. Tantra is an incredibly healing sexual practice. And so it can be that I choose to practice this so that when my beloved comes, I'm actually ready. I'm available. I'm open in my sexuality. So if there's particular things that are shut down in you, doing a tantric practice might be something that supports you. And I can tell you that that was true for me. I have, when I've been single, worked with practitioners, worked with tantra partners where I've been able to open up where I was shut down, where I was been able to feel where I couldn't feel, where it was more painful than it was pleasurable, and to meet that pain and the emotion that was underneath it. So there are really wonderful reasons to practice Tantra, and it's awakening and generative energy. So even if I don't have healing, I may choose that I want to engage in a conscious sexual practice, even though I might not have a lover in my life right now. I might not have a beloved in my life right now. And so in that container, now coming back to the container, we can decide, is kissing a part or not? Are we having oral as a part of giving or receiving? And in some cases, it might be that one's okay giving but not receiving, or one's okay receiving but not giving. There are no rules about what your boundaries are. But what you want to find is the depth of honoring yourself. What's required in this is honoring yourself. And I'm speaking to both sexes and very much to women. Very often, we will want that connection so much. And particularly if we're not in a relationship and we've been craving the touch and the intimacy, and we won't want to mess up the moment. But some part of us, we start to engage, and we're going, it's probably okay. And I kind of, and if you're a Tantra buddy, maybe you know this person from your community. And yet, if there's any little voice back here wondering, you will do such a disservice to your pleasure by not speaking up front about those boundaries, about that interaction, and how you will both stay safe. Because what we want to be able to do is totally surrender. Totally relax into the pleasure that's available. And if I've got a worry up here, then it's going to take away from my ability to surrender. So men, this is also for you. If you're totally confident and you don't mind talking about it, then take the bull by the horns, if you will, and actually talk about it. Bring it up, because it's going to let her relax more. It's going to let her have more of an experience if she knows that you're clean, that you've been tested, or you haven't been and you're choosing to protect her. Whether that's if you've decided that intercourse is in or outside of your boundaries. And there's many ways to practice Tantra without having intercourse, without doing oral, without kissing. And I'll tell you that in almost exclusively, I'd have to really think if there were exceptions, that my tantric experiences as a single were just hands-on. It was simply hands-on, bringing loving touch, bringing pleasurable touch to the body. And that was what I needed for my healing. And those were the boundaries that felt supportive for me in that space. And it was, for me, very much about healing and awakening. So that's a bit, the number one thing is to be informed. I'll just give you the three things. Be informed about the questions you need to ask and the time frames that are important. Really find the depth of how important that is to you. And if there's any concern, you've got to share it. And then to be honest and share openly, and whatever it needs to get done, whatever needs to be done. I know women that when they're only sexual with an exclusive lover, and the requirement is that he's got all the tests that prove that he's clean and that he hasn't been with somebody before she'll be with them. Because that's how much she honors her health. So there's various things that have different levels of risk. Again, something you're going to want to research the statistics for you and then honor it. So that's the safer sex conversation and a little bit about practicing Tantra as a single. Let's see. My online people, you guys are quiet. If there's a question, please raise your hand. Keep going though. Let's do a couple more questions from here. Let's see. What one turns me on in this moment? What does it energetically and what does it take energetically and practically to rekindle a sexual relationship between two people once the fire has gone out? Is it even possible? It's absolutely possible. And what does it take? It varies couple to couple. Without question, it's going to vary. And there's some common themes. One is that, and it's probably whichever direction it might go, there's probably an underlying element. The underlying element is going to be something unspoken. And that could be a hurt that's been unspoken, and it might be a whole bunch of hurts that's been unspoken. It might be that the same way that we were talking about, we might not speak our boundaries because we want to be in love. We don't want to upset somebody. We want the connection. We want the touch. We want the pleasure. And so we don't engage with each other and speak the truth. And so maybe I haven't told you that I really don't like the way that you often touch my clitoris. And I just tolerate it. And I can do that for a while, and I kind of move myself, or I do something different, but I don't communicate that I'd really prefer that you touched me a different way. I just keep avoiding the topic by moving my body or doing something different. Okay, it's my turn to pleasure you. And that can go on for a few months. It can go on for a few years. It can go on for many years. And then it's like we're not even interested. And we want to blame it on him because he's not doing it right. And yet we haven't communicated what we really want. And so the resentment has built up. So now we've got to come back, and most of the time when we want to rekindle, it's reconnecting with what brought us together in the first place, and equally, if not more important, is clearing out the unspoken pile of stuff that's gotten between you. So it's like we'll have this and we'll tuck it under this rug, and then this will happen, but we don't want to, don't want to deal with that, so let me tuck that under here, and oh, okay, we sort of got that one okay. I'm pissed, but it's not that big a deal, and we pile that up. And then we keep, and year by year by year by year, we've got this huge pile of stuff, and it's like, where are you? I can't feel you anymore. Yeah, you don't really try. Nah, I'm not interested. I got a headache. All the different reasons that we use to not engage. And they feel authentic. And the truth is they are authentic, but there's deeper. There's something deeper. And so to rekindle that flame, that's one of the most common things that couples need to do, is clear out what's been unsaid and get really, really honest with each other. Another reason that the flame can get a little lower is kids, stress, busy times in businesses. And then it's not so much what's gotten between you, but it's just somebody making the choice to recreate the environment that invites you both in. And it's coming back to the turn-ons. It's coming back to what is it that lights you both up. And sometimes those are going to be different. Some people may be lit up by candles. Some people may be lit up by certain kinds of music that lay the foundation that help ignite the fire. And so it can be bringing the romance back. And it's one of the things that we'll look at in the Igniting Romance workshop coming up in May, is what are these qualities, what are these needs that wake us up? What brings us back into our connection? And not just our turn-ons. In some of the more sexual-focused workshops, it's more about the turn-on, but this is about the connection. And what is it that brings that connection back, that lays the groundwork for us to connect deeply, intimately, both with our hearts and with our genitals, so that we can just explode in that pleasure? And so it's about finding the space of reconnecting and touching back into the simple things. We dated when we were dating, And often we will go into our long-term relationship and we don't date anymore. We don't court. We don't flirt. We don't do the little things. There's a lot of, even unintentionally, taking for granted the partner and what they bring or don't bring. And so coming back to one of the secrets of lasting relationship is celebrating our partner. And so in this rekindling is to look at how do we come back to celebrate our partner and really bring what it is that lights them up. And when they light up, it often lights us up. Or, better yet, there's another one that we'll be working, another section that we'll be doing in the Igniting Romance Play Shop that's called, it was on the tip of my tongue a second ago, who's showing up? And so we often want to blame our lack of intimacy or our lack of romance or our lack of connection or our lack of playtime on our partner. And yet, because they're doing certain things or they're not available, and what we want to do is take back our power. And our power, one of the ways that we have power is to look at who's showing up right now. Who am I when I arrive home from work? Who am I bringing through the door? And so for me as a woman, am I bringing exhausted businesswoman through the door? And am I bringing irritated at my boss businesswoman? And is that what I want to create with my partner? And yes, I'm 100% about honoring your authentic experience. And it's also about choosing. I can have this frustration, I can have this exhaustion, and I can also choose to come from my open feminine space where my man may want to fill me and serve me even because of softened, rather than coming in from the aggressive or coming in from the resistive. This is one of mine, is so I get exhausted and I put up my walls, don't come near me. And yet if I could choose to be an open and receptive woman in those moments when I forget, I believe that there's much more possible. And I know there's much more possible because when I do let down that guard and I actually let myself receive, it's amazing what gifts show up. And so choosing and looking at the different aspects of how you get in touch with who you want to bring to dinner, who you want to walk through the door after work, who you want to bring into the bedroom at night, and choosing the authentic expressions of yourself, because there's many expressions. And so this is just a kind of a fun tangent a little bit, but there's a conversation that will sometimes come up when we get into the deeper work about masculine and feminine traits and the idea of manipulation. And is manipulation always a bad thing? And so the example I like to use in that is, I've decided that I think it would be really great to have a sexy romantic night with my man tonight. And so I can do what I normally do, and he walks in and I'm in my jeans and I'm focused on my laptop and hi hon, how are you? Quick kiss, and that's who's showing up. Or I can choose, I know he's had a long day, I'm not sure he's going to be interested, but I'm going to give us the best chance possible to have a really hot night. So I'm going to put on my little dress, I might put on a negligee, I might put on a ribbon, and that might be it, whatever it is. And then I may choose how to greet him at the door and how to touch his chest or how I want to kiss him. And so I'm showing up as my seductress. And is that manipulation? Did I manipulate him? If he chooses to respond to me, now I have to let go. If he says no, that's part of being whole in our sexuality, is being able to bring it and then allow it not to always be responded to. And in that seductress, I've invited him and both of us to experience something that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And so I get to choose, what do I want to create tonight? And so that's part of the who's showing up work that we will do in the play shop coming up. All right, let's go back to a couple more questions. What can you tell women with low libido? What can you tell men who have an insatiable sex drive? Low libido for women. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. And there's a lot of things that contribute to it. Our hormonal cycles contribute to it when even our hormonal cycles during the month, our hormonal cycles over the years, and has a definite impact on our libido. Our stress, huge impact on our libido. Our self-care, our exhaustion. I learned this through some of the Taoist sacred sexuality work that I've done, in that the sexual hormones, many of the sexual hormones are generated by the adrenals, and the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys. And so in Taoist lovemaking, what they will often do is, first you'll warm your hands up as a partner. You'll warm your hands up to bring some energy, some heat, some life force into your hands, and then bring those hands to the kidneys on your partner. And you could bring it with the palms and you rub on the kidneys. You can use the fists and wake them up a little more vigorously. But it's waking up that part of the body. And so this is very common in the Taoist tradition, is to awaken that sexual capacity and bring some extra energy to it, some chi in their language, into those organs that are part of our sexual energy. So that can be one way to help awaken sexual energy in a moment, or amplify it. Even if it's there, let's just do a little bit of massaging. It can be part of your foreplay and your opening up. And so that's one way. Exhaustion is a big thing. Not eating the right foods, things like that, being dehydrated, lots and lots and lots of things. So for women, it's typically low libido means self-care. And self-care can include looking at what do we need to balance out our hormones, however we might do that. There's a million things that impact hormones. But looking at those pieces. And then if you recognize that even with low libido, and I've gone through stages of this, and there's even a part of it that's happening now. There's a wave of lower than I would desire libido, but sexuality is incredibly important for me. And so then I get to choose it. And when I'm low, I'm not going to choose it as often, but I also know that it makes a difference in my life, whether I'm with myself or I'm with my partner. And so I'll choose that even though I'm not as turned on and hot as I'd like to be when we're getting started, it's a connection and an experience that I want to have. And you can, this is a great way for women when you're in low libido, and men, for your woman, her sexual energy fuels her. So you can simply just touch her to fill her without having to get off, without her having to do anything. This is a gift that I get from my partner, is to just be stroked, to just be pleasured so that it fills me. And I can use that then. We don't do anything else. He just offers that stroking, that pleasuring to me, and I get to receive it, and it gets to fuel me. And so that's another way to connect in with someone with a lower libido, is women, we have to choose it and be available for it and find out whether it can nurture us, and find out that, even if I'm not getting the intense waves of pleasure that I know are possible, I'm not having the high turn-ons, but I'm filled by the connection. I'm filled by the sharing, and I'm fueled often by the sexual energy. But choose. There are certain things that for me, regardless, are going to be more exhausting when I'm in that lower tired state, and I don't go there. But I find the ones that are fueling for me, and I say yes to those. So that's the woman's part. And for an insatiable sex drive for a man is honor it, honor it, honor it. And as a woman is to also honor it. And yet we can't be obligated to respond. And there's ways that you can meet your partner. And men with that huge sex drive is being with yourself is going to be a big part of that. And cultivating that energy. Also, What can drive insatiable sex drive for a man is that all the sexual energy gets aggregated in the genitals. So you want to practice breathing that up out of your genitals and using it as a generative, powerful force in your life. So you can take, and I've done this with, in the past, is that in the morning to do some form of lovemaking, not necessarily intercourse, but raising our sexual energy with the intention of carrying that power into our day for creativity, for intention and potency and effectiveness in raising that energy, not orgasming, but starting to cultivate, how do I bring that energy up into the rest of my body? And even to the point where you can let it go all the way through you and it starts to bring a connection to the divine. And so allowing and learning how to move your sexual energy so that it goes through your whole body, penetrating the whole of you, rather than getting stuck and being so amplified in your genitals. So that's one practice for men. Another one is the self-practice that I spoke of. Another one is finding ways where you can get pleasure, even without having to go into a full-on intercourse. If your honey is tired, she might just put her head on your shoulder while you pleasure yourself. Or she might hold the base of your lingam while you pleasure yourself. She might be more than willing to pleasure you with her hand and not have to receive anything. Sometimes for me, I just much rather offer that pleasure, connect in with that way, but I don't want to engage my own body. And that's cool. That's, however it is that you meet each other that helps you move the energy that you have. And then also from an insatiable standpoint, there are sometimes stories. So going back 30 minutes ago, talking about the emotional drive that gets attached to our behaviors. And our emotions can have a shutdown on sexuality. Our emotions and our belief systems can also have us overamp our sexuality. And so if it's really insatiable, if it's really overamped, what belief systems, what are we holding on to? What programs, if you will, have been installed in us that are driving that level of insatiability, that level of lust? So that's another aspect of what to look for in how to be with what we might call an insatiable sexual appetite. Oh, let's see. Gosh, you guys are quiet tonight. What would an enlightened or extremely healthy and vibrant sexual self look like? And what would be 3 steps I could take to move myself towards these? Or towards this ideal, actually. And so, looking at that, healthy, broad term. And yet, I think as in any part of our life, where are we the most powerful leader? Where are we the most grace-filled parent or lover or partner? Where are we the best honorer of ourselves? And I think the fundamental thing that comes beneath it is authentic. And there's been so much repression around our sexuality. There's so much bad. There's so much shame. There's so much guilt. And even people that have amazing sex lives, when they want to go to have them be even better, which is some of the reasons that people will come to me or will take a Tantra workshop, is that they want even more. And yet finding out that even though they've had this amazing sex life, there's a part of them that's been holding back for a variety of reasons. And so healthy, I would say the number one thing to healthy and vibrant is fully expressed. And fully expressed doesn't mean that because I desire something, that my partner has to respond. But I have to own that I have that desire. I have to share it. I have to speak that I have that desire. Because the moment we try to hold something in, it separates us. And not only does it separate us from our partner, but it separates us from ourselves because there's this self-denial that's happening. And so the sexuality is coming to know your desires and fully expressing them. Another aspect of a really healthy sexuality is one that's big and expansive and can experience on a really big level. So there's an idea of how open are you how big are your pleasure boundaries? And so they continue to open, but one of the ways that we realize where we're closed or where there's more potential or ecstasy possible is when we start to notice our emotions and we start to notice our sensations. So there's certain sexual practices where it will be very much about what is it? What sensations? Am I feeling heat? Am I feeling electricity? Am I feeling tension? Am I feeling a relaxation? What sensation? Am I feeling as if it's like air blowing across me? Is it like a tingling? So the sensations that occur, and where do they occur in our bodies? When you really start, again, most of us are so focused in our genitals around our sexuality, but you'd be amazed that when you start paying attention to the wholeness of your body, that a really amazing experience that might have started with the lingam opens the heart, and it's like a wave of this warm, oozing love goes through your heart. But you have to be in contact with and aware of the sensations that are happening in your body. So that would be the second thing, is the emotions and the sensation. And then it's a willingness to be out of control. It's a willingness to let go and find the edges, because sexuality is not about being in control. Now, that can sound really scary. When it comes from a healthy place with a trusting partner, to fully be able to surrender to our pleasure is what takes us to the new levels of ecstasy and beyond. So to explore, what is it that would have you trust more? What is it that would have you surrender more? And allow that to be your guide in opening you to a really healthy and powerful sexuality. So we've got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to take just probably 90 seconds of those 2 minutes and tell you that on May 18th, there are 2 events coming up that are very much about creating the romance that we want, creating the connection that we want, and moving out what's in the way of having those. So there's a play shop from 10 to 4 in the afternoon, or 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. Play shop. We're going to get in, we're going to get silly, we're going to look at some really fun and playful things about relationship. We're going to clear out some of the stuff. So this idea of who's showing up and learning how we can choose and what the possibilities are. Learning the needs that we have. And those needs are actually different for men and women, and they're simple. And yet when you know them and you know what they are for your partner or your potential partner, it can amplify things so much more. We're going to look at, what are some of the other things that we're going to look at? Oh, the formula for chemistry and attraction. What if you knew the formula to create lasting chemistry and attraction? And you knew all the elements and you knew how to apply them so that you could keep that chemistry alive and you could create those sparks immediately in your new relationships if you're single. So these are some of the pieces that we're going to play with during the play shop. And so that you can have the pleasure, the love, the connection, the depth, the passion, the sex that you want, because you're empowered to know how to bring it. You're empowered to know how to create it. And you're free to enjoy it, because there's so many of us that have closed here, we've closed here. So let's open it back up so that you can really have that power in your life and enjoy that. So that's the daytime. And then the evening, it's the Conscious Lovers evening. And we'll do what's called a puja. And a puja is a celebration of the masculine and feminine. And so men and women will come together in a very safe, sacred space to celebrate each other, to honor each other. There'll be a very specific practice that we'll do with a variety of different experiences that are designed to awaken deeper our own masculine or feminine, to celebrate it, to awaken it, to heal it where we've been wounded by the opposite sex or by the masculine or feminine. We'll clear out some of that wounding, and we're going to play in the pleasure. So men, if you want to watch women come out in their juiciness, this is a place to do it. Women, if you want to see men in their core, men showing up in their power and in their heart, then this is the place to be. And then afterwards, we're going to open it up with a DJ dance. So we'll spend that first puja experience, that devotional celebration of the masculine and feminine, and then we'll move into a dance. And it's open for couples and singles. It's for those of you that want more conscious love in your life. And so I'd love to have you join me. You can get all the information on the website at happinessloveandpleasure.com. And please, if you've got any questions, there are other events coming up. We have more men's and women's Extraordinary Women Inner Circle, Masterful Men Inner Circle. They're coming up in June, where we dive in as men and women to really open up to the fire of who we are and the depth of who we are, so that we can really have not just the great relationship, but the great life. And so I'd love to see you on May 18th at the Igniting Romance Play Shop. I would love to come and have you play and dance and celebrate with me at the Conscious Lovers Evening. And I'm so grateful for you being here. Please share the links with your friends, and I will see you next month for Let's Talk About Sex. Good night.